Hey everyone, welcome to the Lies We Left podcast. My name is Brooke and I'm here with my three sisters, Rachel, Erin, and Ashley. A quick reminder, we are not therapists in any way, shape, or form, and this episode could be triggering to our viewers, just to let you know. The last we came on our podcast, we had Rachel sharing, and now we're going to go with Erin's story. Erin, thank you so much. Take it away.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm the third born, and let's see, where do I start? I guess we can start back in my wee little childhood. So I remember, my childhood. I remember I have some good memories. I have a lot of I can't remember a lot of my childhood. I also have, some bad memories, but I'll talk about the good memories first. I remember enjoying being outdoors. I remember, I don't know. I really liked being outdoors. Outdoors was very nice for me. I also liked watching TV, but we didn't get to watch much TV, so there's that. So I remember a lot of my childhood just feeling mixed about my environment. I knew I loved my sisters. I knew I always wanted to be with my sisters. I knew I wanted to spend as much time with them, but I didn't really enjoy being with my parents. Sometimes I enjoyed being with our dad, but his temperament got a hold of him, and it would just happen at any moment of time. He, some little thing would get him upset, and then he would just start yelling. So he was kind of someone who I didn't know what to think about, because around other people he would be really funny and he would be fun, and then when it seemed like there were no other adults around, he would lose it. But I do have some fond memories of him. I just, I have this memory of him taking me on a bike ride to learn how to ride a bike without training wheels, and I couldn't do it, and I got so frustrated. I was the one who got frustrated, and I just, threw the bike down, and I walked all the way home, and he was laughing the entire time. So,
are you really telling the story that way?
What do you mean? That's what I remember.
He pushed you down a hill.
He did?
Yeah,
Yes.
he let go.
He pushed you down a hill.
Oh.
You're screaming your head off because you don't know what you're doing, and he's just laughing the entire time.
Oh.
I got so angry at him. You left him.
I do remember leaving him.
You
and
just
I remember
walked
being
off,
really
and he's
upset.
yeah. You left him at the bottom of the hill with the bike, and I just turned around and walked with you. I was like, "What is wrong with you?"
Okay.
And I was only a couple of years older.
Well,
and I just
mind.
remember being so sad for you and angry at Dad, and just like, what is wrong with his head?
Well, never
that makes
mind.
him
I
laugh
guess that
at
isn't
his
a good
kid.
memory.
I'm sorry. I just ruined it for you.
I just don't know if I have any good memories now. I'll have to run them by y'all first to see if they are.
I'm
Well,
sorry. I just
so-
remember that differently.
No, I remember at a very young age just wanting to learn, wanting to be read to, wanting to know how to read, and that wasn't happening. I remember, looking at books and trying to figure out, I knew some of the letters of the alphabet, and I'm not talking like I was 4 years old or anything. I'm talking like 5, whenever a child, 5, 6, something like that. And I remember looking at books and, saying, okay, that's an A. What does the letter, okay, maybe I can make sense of, A, and then maybe this word will come to life to me, but, things like that never happened. I remember there was this curriculum that our church used called PACES or ACE, something like that. Honestly, I think they should be put out of business.
I agree with that.
It's a terrible curriculum. I think it's good as far as the math goes, but anyways, doesn't matter. Well, for people who really don't understand, it kind of dumbs it down.
I think their English
some stuff
is really good, but
yeah, well,
about
anyways, so I remember someone, and I'm so sure it was not our parents who bought this because we were so poor, but someone, and I have a feeling it was the person who we lived in their home with, that woman who she owned that house. I think she's the one who bought those. And I remember the stack of what they called PACES just being in this box, and I was so excited to learn, and I really wanted to do it, and I was never taught anything. And I remember that stack of PACES in that box just sitting in a corner of that house, and no one was teaching me. And I would look at them, and I would just look at them, and I would try to figure out what it was saying, and I couldn't read. I don't know who taught me to read, but still to this day, like, pronounce the whole grammar part, how you pronounce things, there are still some words that I have issues with because that solid foundation was never taught to me. I mean, they're like big words. I'm not talking about like everyday words. It's like big words. So anyways, I definitely remember that. I remember being made to not feel like I was enough. I remember being made to feel like I was not. There were never words like "you're beautiful" to me, or "you're so pretty," or anything like that. And I remember longing for those words because, well, I don't really know if I heard those words from other people, but I remember the classic movies that we watched because we could only watch classic movies or Christian movies or, Christian theme stuff. And there were words like that. The guy gets the girl, "Oh, you're so beautiful," all this other stuff in it. And, those kind of words were never said to me. So I had red hair, I had freckles. Later on in life, during the puberty years, I had glasses, and I was very different from all my sisters. My two older sisters had brunette hair. My younger sister had blonde curly hair, and then Ashley came around and had, she just looked like a little doll and everything. And so I remember looking at all of my sisters and thinking, well, why am I so different? And I remember feeling at a very young age, I might be adopted, or I might not be, like, I didn't know the concept of infidelity or anything like that. But I remember thinking I cannot, like, I can't be a part of this family somehow because I look so different. I remember there was no such thing as physical affection. There weren't hugs, there weren't pats on the back, there weren't words of affirmation, there wasn't anything to tell. There weren't anything to tell. Sorry, Rachel's phone is going off. Just turn it off.
Yeah. I am sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's
I
okay.
turned it off.
We already know it's on, so just do whatever you need to do.
I'm like 3 shades of red right now. Sorry.
What was I saying?
There were no words of affirmation.
There was nothing. There was no imagination that was encouraged. There was really the basic needs of a child to become, to nurture them. All the things that a child needs to be nurtured, it wasn't there. There were rules. There was a lot of yelling. What the hell, Rachel?
Give me your phone. Hand me your phone.
I just smashed it.
Okay. there, there were rules. There was talks about this God who apparently died on the cross for you, but hates your guts. It was basically like that. Like, every day you sin, you're a sinner. You were born into sin. All this other stuff. The 10 Commandments were taught to me. All this other stuff. There wasn't the concept of love. There wasn't the concept of grace, forgiveness. There wasn't a concept of healthy anything. It was just, we're living in this destructive world and you're a part of it kind of theme. And I don't think as a child I would have been able to express any of those things because I thought that was normal for everyone. We weren't allowed to associate with people outside of our church unless it was to witness to people. And but we did have these 2 women stay with us. Well, I say with us, but we were actually in this woman's house. So it was this woman's house. These are my earliest childhood memories, was living in this woman's house. It was our family as well, and then 2 other women. And these 2 women that stayed in the house, they were so loving.
Yeah.
They were so incredibly loving. And they were so kind. They played with you. They took you out to go do things. They talked with you. And they treated you with dignity and respect. And they were just so fun. And I remember not ever wanting to particularly leave this one. I didn't ever want to be left alone. Not left alone. What am I trying to say? I didn't ever want to be
not with that person.
Yeah, not with that person. I was very connected and attached to that person. And I remember her leaving for work a lot and I would cry. I remember at a young, in this particular house, this is where if I wasn't playing with my sisters, I remember having to just be by myself. And I would play Go Fish by myself. Only I called it Goldfish because I didn't know that it was Go Fish. It actually wasn't until I was much later on that it was Go Fish and not Goldfish. So I remember, though, just not having anything to do, no one reading to me, not knowing how to read, all this other stuff, and really resorting to my imagination. And it wasn't an imagination like a normal childhood imagination. It was, I started to become engulfed in a world where I wanted to live in. I imagined myself as a princess or an actress, all these other things. I started to build this world, this world that was imaginary in my head, so that I could, now that I know what I know now, it was to get out of the world that I was in.
Yeah.
I remember later on in life, in my older childhood, my adolescent years, I remember that's when the knowledge of that we did not have money really sank in. We were very poor. There were times where we had to resort to just like scrummaging through the pantry, what was there. I remember seeing the pantry a lot very bare. And there would, I've said this before, but I still remember sometimes there would be peanut butter, sometimes there would be crackers, sometimes there would be jelly, sometimes there would be all 3 of those, and I would make peanut butter jelly crackers because, that was all that there was. I remember having to make food for Ashley and trying to find something for her, and I remember her being like, I'm still hungry, and I would search through the fridge to try to find something for her to eat. And I remember getting frustrated at Ashley because I couldn't come up with any more food. And I think I would take that out on her and make her feel bad for wanting to eat more. But it was really because there wasn't any more food to be offered. And so I didn't know how to come up with any more creative solutions, to give her food. So I remember that a lot. I think this is when I started feeling hopeless about things, but it was like the beginning of hopelessness. It wasn't like a full set on hopelessness. I think that's when I started to kind of dive more into my imagination. I think I locked myself in my room a lot, in the bathroom, and because there was nothing else going on, there was no school, there was nothing like that, and I remember just, well, if I can create this world that I can escape from, then there's that. So I remember those words that were never said to me just continuing. You're not pretty, or never being told I was pretty, never being told all that stuff. No affection being shown. But I do remember at times Cindy would randomly just pull me aside and say negative things about my body. I remember playing and other people were around, and she said she said exactly this, and other people around, and then she just pulled me aside. She said, one day you'll grow into your nose.
Aww.
And I remember thinking I was a young girl. I think I might have been 9, something like that. But here's what's crazy is it was the day, I think it was Christmas Eve. It had to have been Christmas Eve because we celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve. And I remember getting a Lucy doll or something. I was really excited about Lucy. Anyone who doesn't know Lucille Ball, I love Lucy. And I got that. This was when we had maybe a little bit more money. I really don't know. And I was so happy about that. And she pulled me aside moments later. Now that I remember this, she pulled me moments from that and told me that. And it was almost like to just crush me. Or like, you're happy? Well, I'm not going to make you happy kind of thing. It was just very it was just so narcissistic. It was
Very
just so
evil
disgusting.
and narcissistic.
Yeah. I remember hating my body, just genuinely hating my body. I saw my older sisters as beautiful around this time. Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. It was very popular to be skinny, blonde, and to show as much of your body off as possible, And I'm not saying things are different, but honestly, things are a little different in that area. But I remember going to stores sometimes and looking at magazines, and I didn't know what Photoshop was, but I see these perfect bodies and wondering, why can't I look like that? I remember at 11 years old, I would think my thighs were fat. I was not fat by any stretch of the imagination. But I remember thinking I was fat and that something was wrong with me. I had glasses, I had freckles, I had red hair, all the things that back then didn't make you popular, and I wanted to fit in so bad. Oh, and I had the mark of being a homeschooler on me, the mark. Brooke's looking at me like, what? I had, 3 strikes you're out. I had glasses, red hair, freckles. I was a homeschooler. I was.
You didn't wear denim skirts. You had that going for you.
Yeah, I guess there's that. Yeah. I remember I think it was around 11 years old, and back then we couldn't have our hair cut.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, and now that I think about it, I don't know why Cindy gave me that haircut. It was a bowl haircut. Now, mind you, it was popular back then, but she had to have known that our dad would have been very upset about it. But it's almost like she did it intentionally.
Yeah.
Because when he came home that night, and I was so excited to show him. And he just looked at me, and he said, "You look like a boy." And he shook his head and walked off. And I remember thinking, I mean, it was just another thing, another person saying I'm ugly. Either not by saying I'm ugly, but by saying something like that.
Well, you know what's interesting about you saying that is that when I was little, Cindy would purposely, I feel like, and I felt like she did it intentionally then, but she would intentionally cut my hair shorter than I asked for.
Yeah.
And
she did do that.
Yeah, she did.
I always thought it was just because she was a bad...
No, she did that on purpose. She would cut it way shorter than what I asked for, and I would always be disappointed with her cutting my hair.
When I was 17, she was giving me a haircut, and she made something uneven in the back of the scalp. And I brought it to her attention, and she said, "Oh, you don't like it? Okay." And she cuts it right at the scalp. And I had this bald patch.
What?
Yeah, it was like,
Dude.
F you. You don't like what I do? All right, I'll really make you hate it.
This is a new development. I did not put
No,
all these
she did
pieces
everything
together.
she could to bring terror, torment, and shame upon us.
Huh. Wow.
Rachel, did she ever cut your hair?
I've been paying my own cell phone bill since I was 13 years old. I've had a job since I was 13 years old.
I don't
Yes.
think did they have cell phones at 13?
Yes,
Well,
they
when
did.
you were 13?
I started paying for my own crap as soon as I possibly could. I
Wow.
didn't want them doing anything having to do with any part of my physical well-being or life. So the answer to that is no. If she did, I was very young.
This is a very new development. I did
not
realize all this.
Yeah, I tried from a very, very young age to get as far away from them as possible.
Crazy.
And I paid for as many things as I possibly could by myself.
I remember just feeling, especially through other people in the church, and I say other people, it wasn't everyone in the church. It was a few women. Y'all know the women that I'm talking about, but they were mean to me.
Yeah, they were.
They were mean to me. They did not, especially one woman in particular. I was friends with her daughter, and it was like my very existence was just I don't know. She just didn't like me, and she made it known.
Yeah.
And it was just that feeling of not being wanted. I remember, and I talked to, two of my childhood friends and yesterday, and the sister reminded me of something, but I remember people in the church, and this wasn't everyone, but people saying about pastor kids, PK,
Yeah.
the abbreviation pastor kids. Well, they're just rebellious because they're PK. They're pastor kids. Oh, I remember one person in particular talking about you, Brooke, because there were certain people in the church that really gossiped, and it was usually the women.
Go figure.
Yeah.
Cluck, cluck, cluck.
I don't remember men gossiping. But I remember this particular set of women doing this, and I remember one of them in front of me, a little kid, about my sister saying that, well, she's just the lost sheep that maybe one day God will find. If he can find her. That's what they said. I remember that. And so this feeling of, well, I'm already expected to fail. Things like that. And it just like solidified this idea about me that I didn't know, like, I didn't think those things about myself, but it was like other people's ideas about me, about my family, about my sisters. It was like I was taking this identity that they had conjured up about me.
That's powerful.
And
I don't think, do you think people meant it as harshly as it was taken?
I think some of those women did, yes.
Really?
Because they haven't
Absolutely.
changed one damn bit.
I think
I
some
don't
of the
think they have.
things that stick out in my mind were never intended as deeply as they went. I think because of the fact that there wasn't any kind of a base Like if somebody says something mean to you that's out of the ordinary, if you have loving parents that are constantly reinforcing your value,
Yeah.
if somebody comes up to you and says something rude, you can kind of take that as, oh, you're just a weirdo, you're just having a bad day and everything. But when you don't have any other base to go off of, things like that are particularly hurtful and detrimental, which just goes back to the thing you need to think before you speak.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I believe that people meant it as deeply as those things went with us sometimes.
Well, I remember, it wasn't everyone. And we all say things that we regret and we don't really mean much by it. So I'm sure that there were people like that. I know that there were people like that. But anyways, so the, education was still a really big thing to me. I really wanted to learn. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to learn, and that wasn't happening. Cindy was asleep a lot, or she was locked in her room, all this other stuff. I remember going to the Christian school that our church did, and, the teacher wasn't paid, so I'm going to give her that. And she was a good teacher, but I annoyed her a lot. I think I didn't know what I was doing, and I was scared, even though like my personality, like I was still trying to figure out where I belonged and all this other stuff. But I would speak out of turn. I would do these things. And I remember she was very hard on me. And there were questions that she would pose that I didn't understand. And in my head, I was trying to make sense of it, but I couldn't make sense of it. And so I would do something like, well, she didn't sound mean when she said it, so maybe she meant that I could do it, so I would do it, and then I'd get in trouble. So it was just, I just didn't understand a lot. There were quite a few people that were very kind to me, and I remember that. I remember this was kind of older, maybe like 12, maybe 13, something like that, 12. There was this boy who was like the god to everyone, I feel like, especially that one woman in particular, and everything that he said. It was just so funny to everyone, and it was so funny to her. And he would joke about balls sometimes, and I didn't know what balls were. Maybe I was a little bit older than 13. Maybe I was 14. I don't know. And no, I wasn't 14. I think, anyways, it doesn't matter. And I thought to myself, well, because I really wanted this woman to like me. And maybe if I joke about balls, then maybe she'll think it was funny. So I did. And she looked at me and she said I was perverted. And I didn't know what perverted meant. But this other woman heard, she was there whenever she said it. And I felt so bad about myself. I didn't know what I did that was wrong. I didn't know what balls were. I didn't know what perversion was. I didn't know any of that. And that other woman took me aside and she said, I want you to know you're not perverted. What she said was wrong. And that meant a lot to me. I still didn't know what perverted meant at the time, but it felt good to be validated that I wasn't trying to be an evil child like this woman thought I was. So going to my teenage years, my need for acceptance, my need for feeling like I was beautiful, my need for physical affection, I think started to develop into seeking the attention of boys. And so I tried, doing that. Anything that I could do to make it to where a boy liked me, I did it. If it meant that I changed who I was, I did it. And I quickly learned that boys in particular either liked girls who were really flirty and loose. And I guess I was flirty sometimes, but I couldn't be that flirty because it was so awkward to me sometimes. But I did figure out that boys were really enamored by other girls who were adventurous. And so I was like, I can do that. I'll do that. So I was always the first one to, if we jumped off a cliff at the lake into the water, I was always the first one to do it. I was always the first one to just make my presence known so that I could, one, get the attention of others, but also, two, build this reputation of this girl is invincible. This girl can do, she's not scared. And I think I decided I needed to build a wall around myself so that people couldn't hurt me, because I was tired of people hurting me. I was tired of people in general and their messiness, but I didn't know that that's what it was. So I did whatever I could to build a wall around myself. I remember not crying anymore in the teenage years. And I'm sure I cried sometimes, but it was very rare that I cried. Because what was the point of crying? I grew up in a house where your feelings didn't matter.
Well, and you did not want to be touched with it. You were very uncomfortable with hugs.
I
physical
was.
affection of any kind. She would jerk back.
Yeah.
Like she was about to be hit.
Yeah. And I don't remember any physical abuse happening to me, like spanking. I don't remember that. But I think my body knew.
Yeah.
That if I was going to be touched, it was
not going to be a safe touch.
It was not going to be a safe touch. Yeah. So I remember wanting, the woman, one of the women who lived with us, and we lived with that other woman. She got married and everything, and she invited us over as much as possible. And I tried to be over at her house all the time. I wanted to live with her. I felt safe with her, and I wanted to be with her all the time. And I remember thinking a lot, if I could just live with her, then I could go to school and everything would be okay. I never voiced that to her, though, because I didn't know how to voice that to anyone. I got a job as quickly as I could. I began remembering or knowing that it wasn't in the cards for me to go to college, and it wasn't really even in the cards for me to graduate high school. Our dad told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to college. There wasn't any talks about graduating high school, what would happen. There was nothing like that. I do remember, though, things started changing a little. When I was 15 and Cindy started bartering for classes with this one teacher. And this one teacher was just so amazing. She was so patient with me. She knew how behind I was because there was a lot of things that I didn't understand. And she was so incredibly patient. She did probably more for us than what Cindy was working for. And I remember, Cindy did work a little, but I remember, us younger sisters having to work for our classes. We had to clean her house for our classes. We had to help for our classes. And Cindy always made excuses about her feeling sick or, whatever. And she even told us a few times that it was our responsibility because it was our classes.
So I just have to say something. I completely forgot that we had to do that.
Yeah, I remembered that.
How messed up is that? That in order for us to go to school, because it was me, you, and our other sister.
Yeah.
And in order for us to do that, in order for us to get an education, we had to literally work for it.
Yeah.
What kind of world do we, I don't.
Obviously, I didn't know. I'm bawling
I
right now.
completely forgot about
Erin.
that.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah. So.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And what's truly heartbreaking about all of this is, you are a beautiful person. You were never told that. You were never treated like that. But I think you're probably the most stunning out of all of us.
Yeah.
Well, that's a statement. Thank you.
No, seriously. But we're also... sometimes I think about what kind of what kind of a mark we could have made in this world had we actually been given an education. That's one of my biggest regrets. And I did not, with mom and dad, I basically just, deuces up in the air. I just knew that wasn't something I was going to get from them. So I fought for it for myself.
Yeah.
But still, the idea of it's a real pain.
Yeah.
It's a very large hurt for us. The fact that we were never seen as valuable enough to have an education. And as far as like going into higher education, we were never perceived as worthy enough for that. Big hurt.
So I meet this guy, and he was very he was very different from all the other guys I had met. Not that I like went through like guy after guy. It was like 2 guys by that time. And I was enamored with him. We were friends, and then we started dating, and he quickly became my way out. Not that I was looking for a way out. I wasn't looking to use another person as a way out. I was just like, oh, I like him, he likes me, and maybe this could go somewhere. And so he, rather than, in my childhood, I used my imagination to keep me company. I used that as an escape. He became my escape. And it wasn't anything like I was trying to, abuse another person, or I wasn't trying to use another person. It just so happened that that's, what I did. And, I started working. I paid for my own toiletry items, clothing, gas, sometimes insurance, actually most of the time insurance. I paid for everything, and I quickly learned that, okay, I might not be able to get an education, but I could work really hard, and I do have good work ethic, and that's what I will be known for, is my work ethic through adults, and that's how I will be validated. I'm not worthy enough to just be validated as myself. I can only work for my validation. So I remember I put everything, I had this 2 worlds that I was living in. I was trying to prove to my peers that I was invincible, all this other stuff. But then I was trying to prove to the adults around me that I had the best work ethic out of anyone. I was the hardest worker out of anyone. And, I was living in these 2 different worlds, not really trying to, but I was trying to find validity in my identity. I dabbled in, marijuana, drinking, all this other stuff. It wasn't like I was an addict or anything like that, but, it was something to do, so that's what I did. So then it comes a time for me to graduate high school, and I didn't know what the hell was going to happen, because I learned that in order to graduate high school through the state of Texas, if you're going to be homeschooled, you have to prove your credits that you took and all this other stuff. And I knew that was going to be impossible, because that never happened. So I figured out the only way for me to graduate high school is to do a GED. None of this was talked about with my parents. They didn't even talk about anything like that. So I paid for my own GED, and I took my own GED. And there's that. So then I get married, and I quickly found out that with marriage and what I was doing, it just wasn't working. Marriage was something that I thought that I could get out of my situation by getting married, because you weren't supposed to have sex outside of marriage, because that was a sin, even though I had done it. But I didn't want to keep sinning and go to hell, so marriage was the better option, I guess, if I wanted to keep having sex.
And this is your first marriage?
Yes, this is my first marriage. So I got married to my high school sweetheart, as, you know, people, that's a thing, I guess. And I, you know, it was two broken people who were trying to make a life together, and both of us didn't have tools. I certainly didn't have tools to communicate. I didn't have any tools for anything like that. And I didn't know who I was, and it was not working out. I ended up drinking. I visited Rachel and Terry and their newborn son, Trent. No, wait. Yeah, Trent was yeah. And they were in Arizona, and I drank 2 big glasses of vodka straight, and I don't know why I did that, but I did. I don't know how I did that, but I did. And I ended up kissing their roommate. And I did like him. He was so kind. He was very kind. It's not like I had a crush on him right there, but he was a very kind person. And I was drawn to that kindness. And so I ended up kissing him while I was drunk. And I feel very bad about that because it was just a terrible thing that I did. Well, because I was married, but also because, you know, I used him. You know, that wasn't right. And especially drunk. Like, what the not my proudest moment. Anyways, and I ended up telling my husband, and that's when a lot of issues started to arise. He then told me months later that he was going to join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL, and I didn't have an option. And if I wanted to show that I loved him and supported him, I would let him do it. And I started feeling out of control with that because I didn't want to be left alone. I didn't want to have to hear about my husband dying as well and deal with that. And I didn't want to have to worry about that. And it was just all this other stuff. And then Obama became president. And he started getting really angry about, I mean, it was a crazy time for, you know, Republicans back then. It was really crazy for a lot of Republicans back then. And this anger just started coming out. And I didn't know back then, but I was very triggered by that anger. I wanted to go as far away from that anger as possible because that was the environment I grew up in. But I didn't know how to voice any of that. So then there's this guy who I work with. He's older. He's also married. And then he starts coming on to me. Not like hitting on me, but it was like he was trying to test boundaries and the boundaries that I had. And I didn't have any boundaries because back then I was taught, you know, you don't think about yourself. You don't think about whether something makes you uncomfortable or not. If an adult makes you uncomfortable, well, that's your problem. You need to do what adults say.
Yeah.
And so I had that very much ingrained in my head to where my voice didn't matter. My gut feelings didn't matter. I was taught to everything that I felt, you go against it because you don't matter. So, you know, he started buying me things. He would send me inappropriate text messages, dick pics, things like this. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't know who to talk to about it. And I was just like, this, you know, and I never said stop. You know, I just didn't know what to do. And so I guess I just figured one day, if I want to get out of this marriage, the only way that I can do that, because back then I was taught that divorcing is a sin, and that if you divorce, well, you're sinning. And this is so illogical, but back then this is what I was thinking. It would be much better for you to end the marriage, and the only way that you can end the marriage is through infidelity. So the infidelity that I saw the opportunity was through this guy. And so we kissed a few times. He felt me up. I never felt him up because it was just so gross to me. And then he, you know, I wanted to end it because it just felt so gross and everything. But one day I met him at his grandmother's house because he was going to rent that. I was going to end everything, and he, you know, yeah, he, he had, I don't know how to say it.
He put you in a...
Yeah,
he had been grooming you.
Yeah.
And eventually this led up to...
Yeah, so anyways, I said stop. He didn't stop. And I let it continue happening. I didn't fight or anything like that because I thought I deserved it. So I ended up leaving that place, and I drove as far away as I could before I had to pull over and start throwing up. And I then told my then husband that I, had an affair, and we separated that night. And I moved back in with my father and my 2 sisters and your now father-in-law. And yeah, and then, just that pain and everything just started happening. I felt so disgusting. I felt it was just so gross. But anyways, months later, I end up meeting this guy. Well, this guy messages me on Facebook, friends me on Facebook, and we start talking, and he says he's coming home from college. And yeah, I made sure to tell him, that I just got divorced, and the reason why I got divorced was I had an affair, and that's what I was calling it. I said an affair, all that other stuff. So we end up hanging out. He was quite different from any other person I had met. He was positive, and I was really drawn to that positivity. And he was just something that I had never met before. And I got pregnant. And so I felt like a real freaking loser after I got pregnant. I got divorced at 19 years old, and I was pregnant before I was 20. Or I was 20. I don't know. Yeah, I was 20. I was pregnant at 20, so I felt like a real loser. Considered adoption for a little while and went through that process. Decided I was going to keep Sawyer, and we ended up getting married a week before Sawyer was born. And yeah, I had a baby boy. I was so scared of being a mom. I didn't know what to do with being a mom. But the day after he was born, this feeling of protectiveness came over me. And I wanted more than anything to make sure that he was protected. Also, that was the feeling of anxiety that came over me as well. I had always had anxiety, and I think I have always been depressed throughout my life on a certain level, that feeling of hopelessness, but I wanted more than anything to protect my child. And I didn't know why. Every parent hopefully wants to protect their child, but that was the first instinct I had, was I have to protect my child. So then, I eventually have, 3 kids. I start going to college while I'm pregnant with my second child. And that was a very long process. Going to college and having babies is a very hard thing. I, quit a few semesters, or I would take breaks and then go back on. But yeah, and then in 2016, our dad dies, and that really rocked my world. I became very depressed. I cried a lot every day because I had stopped talking to him, because he was making promises to me again, and promises to my kids, and I was done with the promises. So I decided, well, you can let me down, but you can't let my kids down. So I just stopped talking to him. So I dealt with that guilt and everything. And then I got breast implants. I got really sick from those. I didn't know that they were the implants that were making me sick. I was so sick. I almost killed myself twice because I was so manic. and sleep deprived and so sick I didn't see a way out. I thought every day I was dying. It was just the scariest thing I think I've ever gone through. Every day I felt alone. Every day I felt like I was going to die. And then, I got implants, and this isn't the story of every woman, but I got implants because, my husband requested it. He said, for my birthday, because I was going to have a tummy tuck done and everything. He was like, why don't you have your implants done? I think I want that for my birthday and everything. And, I wanted bigger boobs, because I'd always been flat chested, but I was just like, okay, well, I'll do that. And it was like to please him. It was like my whole life was always about pleasing the men around me or pleasing other people because I wanted to feel beautiful. And again, not saying that that's the reason for every woman getting implants, but that was my reason. So it really rocked my world whenever I had to get my implants out. And I looked at my mutilated chest and then I had shaved my head because hair started falling out and I was scared and I was just like, I'm going to, and my hair wasn't getting healthy. It didn't matter what I did. It just wasn't healthy. So I shaved my head. And so I suddenly was faced with a shaved head and this mutilated chest. I won't even call it boobs because there was barely any because of so much stuff that they had to take out. So that's when I really just started to think, I gotta, somehow I have to find my worth. And it can't be through my body. I've got to find something. So then, I still struggle with that, but I think I'm a lot better now. Then in 2019, I start doing EMDR therapy because I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't sleep. And, the first thing that I said whenever I was, one of the first things after I told my story, I said, I've done a lot of things. A lot of things have happened to me, but I've never been raped. I've never been molested. And then, there was that. I was very sure of that. And then start doing EMDR therapy and comes out that I was molested by my friend's brother. And during that vision, I had this, or memory, during that memory, I had memory of my, of red fingernails touching me. And I felt very grossed by that. Well, then it came out later and I started having a memory of being molested by Cindy. And so, and then I started CPS and that was really hard. And then the pandemic happened. I mean, there was a lot going on throughout that whole time. But I think where I'm at now is I've had a lot of questions about God with, our dad dying. I'm going to call him Robert because a lot of things have come out from other people that I just don't know if I can call him dad anymore. So I'll be calling him Robert. A lot of things have happened with, Robert dying and all this other stuff. But I think where I'm at now is I've done so much hiding, not trying to hide from other people, trying to hide from my own self because I didn't know who I was. My whole life I was being told who I was by broken people. Mm. And it formed a broken view of myself. And I think that is one of the most damaging things that parents, that adults can do to a child. I mean, besides abuse them, is tell them their identity in a broken view. And unfortunately, I truly believe that God gives us, I'm talking about parents, our children, and we are stewards. We do not own them. We do not own our children. And God entrusts us with our children. And it is our job to help form their true identity. And if we do it in such a way to where it breaks a child's soul, to where it breaks and it twists their point of view of themselves, then you have failed as a parent. And I'm not saying, and you have failed as an adult in that area. And I realize that is a very strong and harsh thing to say, but it is very true. I have done wrong to my children by showing them at times that they were not who they were. And, I regret that because I have let anger overtake me. But I think it is such an important thing to show children and now adults because, with our diagnoses, DID, there's so many adults walking around with their child version of themselves.
Yes.
Just looking for love and looking for acceptance and looking for truth. And it's our job too as adults to show that to them. And so I think now where I'm at is I'm doing the work of confronting the things that I never confronted. And I'm sitting in that silence, and I'm sitting with those parts of me that are hurting, and I'm telling them it's okay. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to feel this way. I'm going to give you your space to hurt because no one gave you your space to hurt. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I'm at right now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Erin. That is not easy. It wasn't easy for me hearing it. I'm over here crying.
Yeah. What do you want, I guess, our listeners to know, like, from your story?
Well, I think what I just said, you're beautiful. You're perfect how you are. I remember being told so much that, well, no one is perfect because we're born into sin.
What?
Yes. And I don't believe that. I believe that we all have faults and everything like that, but I believe that God makes each person individually and so unique and perfect in every way. And I think that we grow into knowing who we are. There's so many of us adults who just grow into knowing who we are, or, we try to learn who we are. And I think it's so important to do that. I think it's important to learn who we are and to not try to be anyone else. I'm starting to read Atlas of the Heart.
Is it good?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Brene Brown can do no wrong, in my opinion. I know, Brooke, you feel differently. Actually, no, there's one thing that I've always, but this is what a lot of therapists say, that, they did the best they can. I still grapple with that. I don't think everyone does the best they can. I call bullshit on that sometimes. So, but she says, if you have to change who you are, and I'm butchering what she says, but if you have to change who you are to fit in, then you're not connecting to yourself. And in order to connect to others, you have to connect to yourself first. And that is so true. I know you're going to get on Amazon Prime, right? And you're going to order that book now, aren't you?
I actually ordered a Kindle, and I've actually been enjoying that. Why did you look at me like that, Rachel? You use audiobooks.
Maybe that's why I looked at you that way. I don't understand why people get a Kindle when there's Audible.
I will say,
sorry.
I will say that, and especially working with CPS, it's so quick to judge adults for the decisions that they make. And look, I'm literally, there's a Christian saying, don't be the first one to cast the first stone, or don't be the one to cast the first stone, meaning don't judge other people. And I've definitely struggled with that throughout my life. But when you get closer to when I get closer to the parents that I am trying to help reunify the children with them, you hear about their stories. Some of the parents open up, and some of them have had just traumatic childhoods and things that have happened to them, and they were never given the tools, the opportunities to work through this. And so when adults make and kids, when we make these decisions, it doesn't define who we are. it's coming from a source of something.
Yes.
A source of pain that has happened. And I really think that if we start viewing people that way, and I still have a hard time doing that, I'm still working on it, but if we view people in that way, and honestly, I should do that with the people who have hurt me in the church. I really should.
I do. I look at them now through different lenses, like, oh my gosh, how many parts did they have going on?
I am hard with people.
I am harsh
with
too.
Some of those people that treated me poorly, because I have to wonder what happened to them as a child, or what happened to them as a teenager. What lies did they believe about themselves to where they had to make other kids feel bad about themselves?
Yeah.
So I'm learning that. So I guess don't be so hard on yourself if you are making these choices that they don't reflect who you are. Like, they reflect a source of pain in your life.
And it's never too late to change and have those hard conversations. You could be 70 years old.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Erin.
Yes, thank you.
This was not easy. I applaud you. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. So thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Guys, the next episode, we're going to be hearing from Ashley and her personal story. So thank you so much for joining us and being on this healing journey. We truly appreciate all the emails, the messages. We found a community with you guys, and we never expected to be
absolutely
supported. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to go out and be a support system, and I can't tell you how much your support and daily reminders have helped us. So thank you, and till the next time, we love you guys.